I've started recording. Thank you so much for being here. We are here with John Millard. Oh, I butchered it. We are here with John Millard, Waleed Abdulhamid, and Marjorie Chan. Thank you so much for being here. Could you each tell me a little bit about yourself and your favorite song in the performance?
Okay, my name is John Millard, and I'm a composer of music for theater. And do you want like my favorite song of mine or my favorite song of Waleed's?
Ooh. Your favorite song of Waleed's?
It's a tune called Bergen, which was a hard tune to learn, but it's super fun to play. And there's this kind of bass line in it that Waleed will never let me play because I don't play the bass. It's like African secret agent music. It's really cool. And that's my ambition in this gig, is to actually play this one lick. But I just have to wait for Waleed to he just has to be looking the other way or something while I do it. And then he go, "Oh, that's so cool, man. You should do that. Keep doing it." How about you, Waleed? What's your favorite tune?
My name is Waleed Abdulhamid, and musician, cross educator, music teacher, and also I compose a lot of music for theater and film and stuff like that. And my favorite tune, like I have a couple, but for the last rehearsal, I'm really fall in love with the Hollow Man. Hollow Man is almost because why? Because it gives me that almost sound like a jive township style of music from South Africa. Meet John Millard, and I know John Millard didn't like he created his own, but just have that kind of foundation and a beautiful, very uplifting. You feel like you want to jog or you want to just like move. Makes you like very hyper. Hollow Man, that's my favorite tune in the whole show, actually, in the whole show right now. Yeah.
Nice. And Marjorie, could you please introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name is Marjorie Chan. I'm the artistic director of Theatre Passe Muraille, and I'm the director of John and Waleed. I think my favorite song, the truth is, all of the songs I adore, and that's why the show is too long. And so we always have to deal with that. The fact that, there's such a different love for each of the songs that you're like, no, we can't cut that song. Can we? We love it. There's a wonderful song called Doha, actually, that I really love it. And, kind of like they were asking me, why do you love this song? It's not actually in the show anymore, but actually, why do you love this song? And I will say, I love it, as someone on the outside, being in the audience when they play that song, because an audience just digs into it and grooves with it in such a gorgeous way. And they just, and that feels really special. And I will say, we're not having that experience. TPM did our last in-person performances in March of 2020. And we haven't had any in-person performances since then. We've been working online. So maybe I'm nostalgically hanging on to a song or that experience of being in the audience and having and feeling that audience together with the musicians as we're grooving to that song.
Just based off of your answer, Margie, I was wondering, how do you decide what songs are staying in a particular run?
Yeah, I think that's a collective decision. I certainly don't make those decisions myself. They're with John and Waleed, and always anytime we jump into a meeting or to rehearsal, I live in fear that there will be new songs that we will find a way that we have to incorporate, and find video and find support for and figure out an order for. I think we make the decision. I think maybe John and Waleed can talk about kind of like musically how that fits. But I think for me, I'm really interested in kind of offering experience where we can kind of take the theme of a song and make it feel like we then, how does that lift us or give us a space to a story, and then the story lifts us to another place, to another song that thematically brings us elsewhere. So for me, there is a real kind of like interest in kind of crafting an emotional journey through that. I don't know if John and Waleed want to talk about song choice.
It makes me think of well, that the whole idea began as just, it was a fun idea that we were resident artists at the Young Center for the Performing Arts, and the idea was that a bunch of musicians would teach each other songs from their childhood. And so we just have a bunch of people and everybody would teach songs, and people thought it was a good idea, but the only people who were available to do the gig were Waleed and I. So I just started teaching Waleed, like, Christian gospel songs like that I grew up in going to church with, or Scottish folk songs. And then Waleed taught me like Sufi songs from his mosque in Omdurman, and then Sudanese folk songs. And it started with that. And then as we started learning those songs and teaching each other those songs, then we started telling stories just about, whatever we wanted to tell stories about. And then when we did the show again, we mixed those songs with songs that we ourselves had written as adults. And then the stories became more complex and, maybe a bit more detailed. And then we created a kind of an online, like a film version of it quite a while ago. And then we pitched it to Marjorie to see if she would like to help us create more of a theatrical flow and shape it a bit more. We just felt like we needed if it was going to be a piece of theater, it just felt that we needed somebody to kind of watch it from the outside. And that's when we really started to have more of a dialogue between Waleed, and it was more pointed then too. Like it was more, we were just goofing around before, I think, Waleed, right? Like we were just sort of, it's not like we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Marjorie, she's being kind enough to let us try different ideas, and also I told her we trust her choices because also there is a storytelling behind the song. It's not only songs, right? There is a storytelling, and also there is as I said, design was like light design and the direction where are we taking this, and that whole atmosphere of two guys from different part of the world being together in one stage, telling a story and singing a song, and they're almost identical in a lot of different ways. We both teach at Humber music, John in the theater department, and I teach at the music department. We both compose music for theater. We both won Doha, I think, and we both were resident artists, and just being together in the same space and having a person like Marjorie, she just bloomed the whole idea to different, and she brought, okay, well, you tell me what happened there, and then we collect the song where it fits. Even now, even the new two songs I have, and also John have a new songs, like the shape of it is like narrative, like almost like, okay, what next? Like makes you feel like if you are in an audience. Like I remember my friend, he come to us last show we did at the Passe Muraille Theatre, and he told me, like, you guys, you make me feel like every time you tell a story and you sing a song, like what next, what the song will be like. He said, we thought like the whole song or the whole show is just one story, but it's not. There's a lot of story from a lot of different experience in life, right? Stuff like I went through in life as a black man, as coming immigrant, as a Muslim, traveling, living Barkdale, and the whole and you need, for those kind of story, you need the really progressive theater company. You really, what you do, you need the progressive. Like it's not Romeo and Juliet. It's not that fancy romantic. Hey, we are beautiful. And no, it's not. You need the really progressive people. Intellectually, they understand. Okay, hey, we're telling you as it is. This is the story of the people. And just I trust Marjorie. She directed us in a way. She put us on the stage with the crazy, beautiful, funky. I call it funky set designing. And she brought a guy like you do sound, and in a sudden, like it become for me I mean, I played with a lot of pop stars like Deborah Cox, Julie Black. I played with the people Grammy Award. For me, that's the most world class thing I ever did, because we're talking about reality organically, how this story have been combined by songs. And I just want to shift that's where we are now, where we are at. And I wish we don't have to close down, because more you've been in the space of the theater, which is, for me, theater is culture. It's way culture. Like, it's just like you are approached in like the whole society, the culture of theater, like almost like important, the same as any university. Like, I wish we can go walk in and in a safe space, like, but with this situation, we are not doing that. But yeah, that's what it is. I totally, the selection of the song reflecting a lot of crazy, beautiful, you know, story, dark story, happy story, uplifting story, movement story, revolution story, grandma story, childhood stories, daughter story, wives, and the whole thing. It just, and as I said, we are two different people from different part of the world, but we have a lot in common, because we
Mhm.
both in our 50s, we both teacher, educator, we both do music for theater, and we got the another third person, which is a crazy woman. She directing us, and she give us like, she put us, she navigate her way to like really push the boat like more forward. That's how I see it. That's the way I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, all of you. I was wondering, so 2020 was a big year for politics, to say the least, and I'm interested in how the events of last year have impacted, or so to say, charged the energy and intentions for this particular run.
Uh, what are you talking about?
Sure.
No,
So
just kidding. I
yeah.
think, well, is what events? There were many events. What do you, can you just be specific which ones you're referring to?
Yeah. Because I think well, first there's the pandemic that we're still living through, and the fact of people having to either very much like be by themselves and not be with the people that they love. And then in early summer, there were a lot of like the Black Lives Matter,
Sure.
like protests and things that were happening. And I'm just kind of thinking and talking about the general energy of the year, about how like many conversations about like being connected and like differences in like culture kind of came up. And I was wondering if that, because I know that the piece is about like connectivity and talking about like, as we were saying, like your differences and similarities. And so I was just wondering if last year and what had happened, is it all affecting the way that you're doing this particular run?
Say John said something that was really kind of, the truth is, in some respects, when we did the show initially, it's viewed in a naive way, right? That is viewed like, well, here's this guy, he's this white guy, he's from Southern Ontario. His tradition of music is really drawn, out of the banjo. Waleed is from Sudan, and his music comes from there. And it was kind of, I think people assumed that there was kind of a naive approach in bringing those two gentlemen together and for them to play their music. But the truth is, as we're beginning to work through it, there isn't a shift on our part. There's a shift in how people view a white man and a black man on stage. And I think that these conversations that have opened up has given us that opportunity to present this friendship and this musical collaboration in some ways. That there doesn't, there doesn't, in some ways we didn't need to change what we did, because in what they were doing, it's what I think is like an active means of creating connection. John Millard had actually talked about it. It was like, is the work we're trying to do, is it we're trying to reconcile, it's hard to reconcile thousands of years of colonial history, but is in our small personal way, if we can make music together, that's what we're offering, right? From my perspective, it's interesting to come to that point, that it's not so much that like we need to shift, but maybe people view the show differently now.
Yeah.
Did you, Marjorie? I can't remember. When did you pitch this rendition? Because Marjorie came to us this time to ask us about it, Kemi. And do you remember when it was? Was it after BLM started?
It was, yeah.
It was after that had happened. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But the context of the world has changed the show in the sense that, you know, the way people look at the show is different than what it was. I don't know if Waleed, you have a feeling about that?
Yeah, I mean, like art, like always been a tool and platform to work of activism. Like for me, like I see, okay, now you guys, everybody's been in quarantine, right? But we've been in quarantine because of the color of our skin. It's not by choice, right? You know, sometimes I look at it in a different way. Like I laughed, like talking about freedom. Like I have a song called Uhuru, which is a new song to the show, because we use Uhuru very lightly. What mean freedom? Freedom in Swahili mean, in Swahili language, an African language called Uhuru. And there is a very simple life. There is a very simple line says, uh, freedom for all, right? Very simple. And I'm trying to translate it like to 3 different languages. And I'm saying, okay, like, are we really practicing that word? Freedom? Freedom? Are we practicing it, or we just using it as a decoration? Like when you see the politician talking about freedom and about those things, but they practically, there's a lot of things happening, like the movement of Black Lives Matter. You know, I have a song I produced like 4 years ago called "I Can't Breathe," uh, and I think the show itself, like between me and John, like reflecting a lot of that in a lot of different ways. Even the instrument we using, we refer to that banjo instrument, which is that John Millard first an instrument, like it's an African instrument called banjar. And we're talking about the history of that. And by just giving back, like naming the instrument as it is and talk about it, I think it's an opening kind of conversation, like for people to understand and also to share and to educate. And I'm gonna come back again to the show and to the theater in general. The theater is culture. It's like a village. Like a village, you gather to learn. I mean, you know, you come in, you can take something out of the show, and you can also say, okay, that was too much. It's up to you. Like we are not gonna convince you how you see it, but we're gonna project. I feel like we are a reporter. I feel myself, especially. I feel like I have a responsibility of using my platform of reflecting the things happening in society. Could be here, could be in South Africa, could be in Senegal, could be in Jamaica, could be in Parkdale where I live, which is there is a lot of madness about homeless, about people living in a tent. And we put that together in songs, and that by itself is an event. Is an event. It's still, is it really, are we liberating completely? Like now we're talking about like even lockdown. Film said they can work, but theater cannot work, which is theater is way safer space. Like theater is way safe space more than the film. I work in film, and I know exactly what they do. If there is 2 stars, they care about them, but the rest, hey, get corona, get bilharzia, get malaria, who cares, right? And those, like we wanted to see that with all the events happening, especially the Black Lives Matter movement, the pandemic, the election in America, like all those loud noises. Some of them is really help and can lift people up. Like I never seen white people marching for a black guy killed in my life. Like I lived in Europe. I lived in, you know, I've been most of my life between Europe and here, and I lived in New York. First time in my life I see like the majority of the people marching on the street is white people because of this black guy get killed. You know, because the white police officer put his knees on his neck, right? In the past you don't see that. That by itself is a very positive image. That means there is something happening, people learning, and because there is a lot of platform, there is a lot of medium, there is a lot of social media, and theater is big for that. And all those events we trying to reflect through art, through song, through story. what's happening. And I think, yeah, we do have a lot of all the changes from last year to now. We used a lot of those in new songs, new story as well, stories. Yeah.
Thank you. John, did you want to add anything?
Well, it's interesting. Like the show hasn't changed much, but there's more interest in the show now. So I guess that's a positive thing. I guess that's a positive thing that that people are interested in these ideas, and I feel, I guess I feel really grateful that we're getting a chance to go at it again, just as, I mean, as a Black person or a white person, it's as mature artists, like this is like our fourth time getting together, I think, or I'd say 4 distinct times that we've gotten together, maybe the fifth, maybe even the 5th time over what, 12 years, like to get that opportunity to come back. Like we're way up in our 50s now, like we're always the oldest guys in the room now, but we also know a lot about about ourselves, about our craft, and we still, I know we, yeah, and I think we're getting kind of good at it now, and so so that's I guess that's what I mean. I just really appreciate that we've got the chance to go at it again, especially with somebody as talented as Marjorie, you know, helping us articulate it, you know.
Yes, thank you. In terms of working on the piece right now and having it to adapt it to be online, I'm just wondering what things have, well, you did it, a lot of things didn't have to change, but I'm just like wondering how rehearsals have been so far.
Sorry, what was that last, the last little bit?
Yeah, how have rehearsals been going so far?
Yeah, so you're catching us in terms of right in the middle of like, well, how we're adapting because we have new restrictions in the province of Ontario. And so just in terms of that, that's still kind of in process of, but I would say that as a director, like something that we, you know, really think about is like that there is such an energy to them being in the room together and playing together. And like that is actually the piece. And in many ways, we wanted you kind of, as a director, it's also like as you mature as a director too, for me as well, you kind of want to get out of their way. You kind of want to let people who, you know, have a craft that's so highly skilled, you just kind of want to get out of their way. You want to support that in a way that, so the audience has more context and things like that. So like for us, where there was a lot more kind of conversation between the two of them, and conversation that we would kind of ask them to talk about in midst of the show, for a digital version, we've actually pre-filmed a lot of these elements. And so we went down by the water. We spent a very cold day down by the water, kind of filming some of these conversations and some of these interactions. We spent some time in studio filming some of the conversations that come out as a, you know, in terms of some of the things. And so that we are doing that so that we can edit those and show those that might have been like a projection in a theatrical context, but in a video context, then we can show those and allow John and Waleed to focus on, you know, changing a banjo or changing an instrument or getting ready for the next song. So in that way, it's not so relentless, because we're able to kind of offer a little bit of video content to really have that breath, and for them to grab a drink of water and you know, retune a banjo, or and then so that we can actually give them the space to focus on what they do most. You know, that's what we're there for, and so that part of it is pretty interesting. We didn't do a lot of pre-filming or anything for an in-person live performance, but that's one shift that we did make.
Yeah, that's a good one, because we are you know, we do tell stories. Waleed and I, we both tell stories, but we don't tell them quite at the speed maybe that would be necessary for us to make good theater, if you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
So the ones that we tell live, Marjorie really cracks the whip and makes sure that we get it all squished into one little bit of time. And then because it's actually, it's hard enough just to actually play music. I mean, that's one job just there. Just get up on stage and play the tunes well, let alone tell a concise story. So that's been really helpful to have some of the stories be told by videos, you know, or recordings. That's been really good.
And I think like there's a really like, the truth is we're in a time, and then we've been in this time for 10 months now, and we'll likely be in it for another few months, where there is some kind of different art form that is evolving. And I think of it that, you know, in a way, even as John and Waleed kind of both found their roots in music from spiritual practices, actually, that 150 years ago, the only way that you would hear music would be live. That would be the only way. It would be people singing it, be singing in church or in a mosque, and that would be the only way they would experience it. But about 150 years ago, people started to, you know, like we actually had mechanical means in which to reproduce music. And at that time, when, you know, mechanical music became a thing, that was incredibly, like, it was considered by some people to be heretical, because only music could come from an instrument playing it or someone singing. It could only happen live. So then as the mechanical, that took hold, you think of it now, jump 150 years into the future, how often do you listen to live music? Yes, you can self-produce live music. Certainly, John and Waleed really do extremely well in producing live music. But the truth is, a lot of the time, you're listening to music through a mechanical means, through a digital means. And as a society, we've completely accepted that. We're quite happy to listen to music in a digital means. When it's live and it's in person, we consider it more special. And we, in fact, know that we feel privileged to feel that experience. So to me, that says to me, that's 150 years difference from those two realities. And are we at the precipice in terms of theater where we consider live in-person theater as kind of the most special experience, but there's other ways for us to experience it, and we might be just at that time for that to evolve as something that's adjacent to live in-person theater.
Yeah, thank you. Lily, do you have anything that you wanted to add in terms of like adaptation for the show being put online?
Me? Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, that the show. Okay, yeah, of course. I mean, I'm from Africa, right? Like we are born naturally to be entertainer. Like I like to be in front of people for sure. I mean, like even being in a screen sometimes. Like when I watch myself in videos, like I get fascinated. Like, oh wow, I still get fascinated. I mean, and I'm not. I used to everything live in front of me. Like you know, you go in a market, like you're buying onion, you're buying tomatoes, like everything singing live and entertainment, dancing live. You see your mom, your grandma, your sisters, they gather and dance, and also you play music with your friend. And honestly, I'm gonna be very on. Like I find it very strange, like everything now online, because I get fitted out of the audience spirit. Like I am the guy. Like I really love to see people in a room. I love to see group of like people like in front of me. I get used to that since I was a child, right? And since I used to just perform for my mother and her friends, and when I was a little boy, and but we still grateful, like we have a format where we can do things and we don't stop, because just we are in a situation where we gotta do what we gotta do, right? But of course, I am the guy, like I love to see people in front of me. Like I love that kind of intimate, look to the people eyes and tell them a story. Yeah, that's how I grew up, and that's how I learn art. Just naturally, like that.
Yeah, thank you. I've got two more questions. So I want to know, how has it been working with Marjorie Chan? For
Yeah, I can go off camera. Like I can go away. I can
Yeah.
mute it.
I mean, since I'm talking, I'm gonna start with like John. He mentioned like articulated the word, right? I mean, like she's very flexible, like in a way, like if we have an approach, like she will listen to idea and also she will give us what she think, but not in a way like dictating. Like she's a team player. We work as a team very much, and also to have that open-minded director, because we're not an actor. We don't, we're not like acting and running all over the stage. We just sit in. We could be the most boring two guys in a room, but she completely come up with this idea of like set design and lighting, and I am here and Joe on the other side, and also there's dialogue, the conversation, and the narrative of how we tell the story as well. It just brilliant. I mean, we are very grateful. I said that to John a couple of days ago. I sent him a message. It just, I mean, you gotta have that progressive kind of director to understand like what art is, because like somebody else, he might doesn't know what to do with us. Like those two guys from different parts of the world. They are in their 50s. Okay, they are like like they're not really funny sometimes. Maybe they're not really. They just sitting there and goofing around and playing. But when you get somebody extremely creative and somebody out of the box and somebody just can explore, ideas and see things, and that's Mercury. We are grateful to have somebody. I think, yeah, we are very grateful to have somebody like understand like what art is, not like just what theater is or what song is or what actor is, what art is, and also what culture is as well. I want to put that beside what art is and what culture is. Yeah, that's how I see it. That enough for me. John.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with Waleed on all that stuff. Like Marjorie, I've known for quite a while, and I knew Marjorie first as a writer, I think, and even though I know she's been a performer for years and years, I think I got to know her best first as a writer, and her ability to her ability, well, yes, her ability, but her interest in constructing stories out of the things that she sees around her, and also her interest in music. And she seemed to be kind of a good fit for, like, actually kind of a cool fit for Waleed and I too, like, just our diverse backgrounds. She didn't share either of our backgrounds, other than we all come from immigrants. Like, that's what we all have in common, right? Like Waleed's first generation, Marjorie, well, no, Waleed, you are like the guy, you are the immigrant. Marjorie, you're first generation. I think, like, same with me. I'm first generation too. Like, my mom was not born here. So, I mean, I guess that sort of gives us all a tentative, a funny tentative position in society, especially if you grow up with any kind of knowledge of native practice and our role, like the immigrant role, in terms of, well, this isn't really our place. This isn't our place either. So, so to know that, to construct, anyway, I digress. It's mostly about our characters, and I think why we get along and why it's interesting. And I don't always agree with Marjorie either. But I also say that, and then I go, well, you're the boss. Like, I do say, I mean, I'm joking, but I also agree that, you have to cut, like a director, you have to cut them, you have to respect them enough to cut them some slack, if you know what I mean. Like, you have to respect that they'll deliver something of interest and value, even if I don't quite either understand it or even agree with it, but that I respect it, and I know that she respects me too, and Waleed, and I mean, it's interesting. It's tricky when you come up with something like two guys goofing around as resident artists. You come up with some funny idea, and all of a sudden you go, actually, this would be way better if somebody else took over and helped us shape it. And so we had to let go. Like, we have to let go of anything we ever thought it would be, and sort of pull on the same rope that Marjorie's pulling on, so to speak. So that's not a bad representation of what it was like working with Marjorie, I think, like between Waleed and I.
Thank you both for sharing. And my final question for all of you, I was just wondering, so what was something that you've learned from each other? I guess Marjorie, from the time that you've been working with the two of them, and then Waleed and John, just something that you've learned working with each other all over. What's something that you've learned working with each other over the years? Either this is something cultural or something that's just tied to music composition.
She called us Waleed and John.
I know.
Am I not? Is that bad?
Well, that's Waleed's. Waleed's like
other
waiting for the day when somebody will say
other,
Waleed and John.
That's our new show that we're working on, Waleed and John.
What was the question again? What we learned from each other, right?
Yeah, just what you've learned from one another.
I wonder.
What do we learn? I don't know. We've been through such a process. We've been through a process that was like really open-ended, where we were just like, anything's on the table and let's see what happens. And we've slowly kind of gone, oh, is this a theme that makes sense? Is that a theme that makes sense? I think I knew intuitively, but I know now more that I really, that even a song that doesn't have a narrative lyrics or is instrumental still carries dramatic weight, and that I respond to that in a way. And I'm trying to think about that in terms of how do you share that with an audience? Not all audiences share that. Not all audiences listen to music in that way, that they place context within it. So I recognize that not all audiences do that. So how do you support that experience so people do carry that dramatic or narrative weight with a song, even if a song doesn't have that in its lyrics or have any lyrics, frankly, that actually it there's emotion in music that actually can really hold emotion, actually.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think one of the things that became clear and became articulated to me as an artist, especially in this specific thing you're talking about, Marjorie, is that a song, like the first time a person hears a song, I'm not sure, I mean, when I listen to a song first time, I don't always get the lyric.
Yeah.
I certainly don't get the whole, if the artist has given a sort of a balladic structure, like it's trying to tell a story inside the song, I don't usually get the whole story. I'll get snippets of it and I'll hear more later. And I've found that it's like that with many songs, and the story that comes before the song often doesn't even have to be related to the song, but it will give you a context to listen to the song inside, and it'll give you like a narrative weight, and that will allow the music to flourish in whatever dramatic function it has. I know that's really it's complicated, and I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. I just know that having the correct story can really change how the song is perceived. And we've had a chance to try it out in many different ways with this show. And we're trying to get it right. Maybe we'll get it righter this time. So these are technical things that we're talking about, I guess, really. Not cultural necessarily.
Waleed, did you have anything that you wanted to add in terms of things that you've learned?
Learning learning just as like even coming from like a culture of very what I say like very ancient in a way, like be open minded to absorb sometimes.
Mm,
You know, like when I hear a lot of music, I just hear African music in a different way, in a different twisting way, right? Like when I hear like most of the time when I'm learning, when John he talk about his lyrics, it's a storytelling very much, and that African like for me, okay, because sometimes we just don't provide that, like just freestyle in a market, somebody will just start playing drums and create a story, right?
mhm,
And also the picking way of playing banjo is a very African for me, like almost like a playing an agiro or kora or ingoni or something, and but in a different way, right? In a very straightforward, like a different way, and also learning the way of living between the struggle as well. Like a lot of us we think some of those more of the European they just have it easy. Like
mm,
when I hear John's stories, how his grandma she got here and how she sacrificed everything. She left all the world behind in Ireland, and she arrived here with the female daughter, and she just doing crazy stuff, and has only thing saves her because she started playing music. She started playing
mm,
entertaining, and very much it's almost like an African story in a way. You know what I mean? And like sometimes the stories almost there is a similarity in a way. This is different. It's a different time in life, but there is a lot of stories, and also coming with boats, right? Like most of those people, the European, they come with boats, especially the low-income European who comes from Ireland, from Scotland, they come by boat because that's some of them probably they sell everything, they sold everything just to get the ticket to come here.
mhm,
And John Millard, his grandma, one of those people, and just okay,
Yeah, she came by boat. Yeah.
yeah, and also makes you think about okay, the only difference here she come by choice, seeking for a better life, but also, on the other hand, those people they come from Africa, they come as a slave, by force. But the boat and thinking about the immigrant and the whole thing. I just being in the room and listening to the music and lyrics and stories, I feel like okay, wow, day by even now, like last rehearsal before this, like you're learning a lot every time uh, John he would tell his stories, or also learning from sometimes when Marjorie she give feedback about different things about about social justice, about conscious stuff. Theater makes you learn about people around you.
mhm,
Makes also the intellectual growth. Like makes you like okay, I am with bunch of human. They think as a human and they're very aware. They're very conscious,
mhm.
and that's the beauty of theater. Yeah, that's what you learn from theater.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you. I know that I'm taking away from your rehearsal, and so I'm just gonna, yeah, I'm gonna take away from your rehearsal. So thank you so much for speaking to us again. Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you, John, and thank you, Waleed. I'm going to stop recording and stop recording now.